Okay, I have one for you. I have been struggling with my 2013 GL 450 X166 air conditioning. I think I caught some last summer, but definitely in the last month. Um, when I first started the car, the air conditioner would go on. The fans would go on high, and then usually after a minute, you know, the air would still blow but very low. If I changed from AC to max, it just didn't go very high. I could feel cold air, but it just wasn't blowing because the fan wasn't blowing. So of course I assumed the fan was going bad. Pulled the fan out, tested the fan. The fan seemed fine. The fan would run high. When I put power to it, I saw no moisture. I saw nothing on the computer board. So the fan seemed fine. So I was stumped. And I've looked everywhere. I've looked at all the Mercedes discussion boards, YouTube, you name it. I just couldn't find what I was running into. So again, the symptom was every time I started the car, the air would go on high. Would feel cold, but just not what you really want blasting at you on a really hot day. After a minute, the fans would just go low. In fact, that's where the car is running. It is on max, and I don't know if you can tell, but it's barely blowing out. Whereas when I first started the car, it was blowing like crazy. I have no lights. And it was funny because a couple weeks ago when I was working on this, an hour later I go to start the car or turned it off and went to start it and the battery was dead. And, the battery's only like a year and a half old, years old, AGM gel battery. So these things really last usually. So I didn't think much of it. I was working on it, the lights on. I did have the iCar tester going, so I was playing with the compressor, turning it on and off through the computer. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I just drained and killed the battery. So didn't think much of it, jump started it, car started right up. But still the same problem. I get a little bit of air, just not blowing like crazy. So here's what it is. And this will drive you crazy if somebody else ran into the same thing. So I'm 99% sure I have figured it out. So yesterday, I was running errands, nothing big. I did sit in my car for a couple minutes without starting it, and I had the radio on or something. Go to start it, the car's dead. I'm like, God, this is crazy. I couldn't believe it. So I have the Torque app on my phone, and I got the little Bluetooth Torque plugged in my computer. I leave that on pretty much all the time. So I pull up the Torque app, and sure enough, the alternator is jumping around from 11.3 charging to maybe 12.7. And I think these alternators should be definitely charging 13.5 to 14.5, something like that. So I'm like, oh man, my alternator's bad. Still wasn't putting two to two together. I'm just like, completely separate issue that my alternator, was going bad. And it still worked some. It kind of charged it. I never had a light on my dash that said battery. But after that, I did have where my control center would die. In 3 minutes, your control center is going to go off, charge the battery or something. I forget what the actual code is. And then sure enough, the radio in the control center goes dead. So, again, I'm looking at all the research, is this my alternator or, I guess on these, the voltage regulator goes bad. So it's a replaceable part on top of your alternator. From all my research, I guess these alternators are bulletproof. So it's rare that the alternator is bad. It's the voltage regulator. And if you watch the YouTube videos, there's brushes on it. On the top of the alternator, you push it in and the brushes kind of snap into place against the alternator rod. And most people are saying at this point that it's really a maintenance part, that those carbide or copper rods in there wear down over time, and again, you're going to have the symptoms of your battery dying, not charging, the voltage jumping all over. So with my issue, and I think it's been going on for almost a year, I think those brushes were hitting it, but just not well enough, and sometimes would work great, sometimes, would not charge good enough. And I never really drove the car, more than a few miles. It was rare that I, did a lot of that. So, anyways, so here's what I think has happened. Because my voltage regular, my alternator, has not been fully charging my battery. And again, the AGM batteries, what people don't realize is you need to really charge over 14 volts. I don't know the exact number, but you have to have a high charge to actually charge an AGM battery. Most people don't realize that. They think of the old batteries, you put a battery charger on it, it's going to charge no matter what. Well, these AGMs, they have to have voltage over, again, I don't know what it is, 13.5 or in the 14 volt ranges, where sometimes these old battery chargers will not charge an AGM battery because it's not hitting that high enough voltage to actually charge the battery. So that's what's been going on. My alternator's been working well enough probably to keep the car running, because I never had a symptom where the car died. So it was barely charging it, 13.7 to 12.9, enough to keep the car running, but not truly charging my AGM battery. So over time, months, it finally would drain that AGM battery down to nothing, to where then finally the car would either not start, or your control center is going to turn off in 3 minutes, because your charge system. And again, not realizing related. So here's the kicker. I think all of this time that I've been fighting with my air conditioner, it's because this computer, this car, whatever, when it doesn't sense enough voltage, either through the battery or the charging, it's slowing down the fan in the air conditioning. Now the compressor was going on because I could feel the cold air, but the fan is what after a minute would always go down low, after a minute of running the car. That's what was stumping me so bad, because everything seemed good. But I think the computer was limp moding the air conditioner so it didn't drain the battery even further, so that the car didn't die. And I've been going through this for months, so this has been going on for months. And lo and behold, my test has been today. I charged my AGM battery overnight, all night. I'm in the car right now, drove the car. The air conditioning worked perfect, blowing like a champ, just working great. And then after driving about 25 minutes, sure enough, it just happened. All the air went down, because it's never gone 25 minutes with high air. The air conditioner was on for 25 minutes at high, full blast, working perfect. And I was watching that torque app, and sure enough, when I first start that car, my alternator voltage regular with a full battery was charging at like 14.6, 14.1. It was jumping all over, 13.7, but I think it was enough that the computer kept everything running properly. But after about 20 minutes, my torque app showed my voltage drop down to 11.3, 12.2, 11.7, was all over the place. And sure enough, after I saw that, about 5 minutes later, the condition is right now. My car is running, but my fans are barely blowing. They're blowing and it's cold. I can feel the compressor on and the Freon, being circulated because it's cold, but the fans just are not going. And I think the car is in limp mode. And again, at this point, I have not changed the alternator or the voltage regulator, so I did order that last night. So I'll do a little video on that, but there's enough videos out there. Looks like my car might be one that I don't have to fully pull the alternator out, that I can change the voltage regulator with it in. You still got to take it off the mount, I guess, to be able to turn it to get to the voltage regulator on top of the alternator. And I'll do a follow-up, or I'll go in the comments here. If I change that voltage regulator and everything's good and the air is working, all this time I thought I had an AC problem. It was the voltage regulator. It was not fully charging and the car was going into limp mode. If you guys know anything more about this, or want to add any more comments, I mean, I'm a weekend warrior. I don't, I hardly know anything, I don't know that much about cars. I just go on YouTube to figure things out. So appreciate your time. I really, really hope that's helped somebody else, because I could not find anybody with my symptoms. Every time I started that car, that fan would go on high. I couldn't find anybody else saying that. you know, it was their fan just wouldn't work, or it wouldn't go, they couldn't adjust it or whatever, which came down to a fan. And I guess some of these, the filter would leak onto the fan, and so the computer board would, go bad or have to be resoldered, or to change obviously the interior fan. I charged the Freon system. I mean, I was stumped because the compressor was going on, the fan would work. I was stumped. And in the end, I think it's this voltage regulator. So I'll probably change that next week, and I'll leave an update. So thanks for watching.